So I'll kiss you one more time before I have to see you leave me, long before your time is due. I'm sorry that we never got the time to trade more stories that create the lifelong memories we cherish and keep in our hearts forever and a day. Always knew that I would feel this pain without you, and it hurts me to the bone. How I wish we had more time. I hate to feel so alone. I show now how I miss you through the tears that make me stronger, 'cause it gives me peace by bringing back the memories of times we shared and what you meant to me. So I'll miss you, and then when we meet again, you know I'll kiss you, make up for the times I've yearned to have you next to me, to hold you close, be glad to have you back with me. And welcome, everybody. For those of you who have followed the show, you remember that from last year when we did the COVID memorial special. And that still breaks me up when I listen to it and look at the video. The pandemic was really the only way to look at it as the modern day Holocaust. This was planned by the powers that be to cull the herd and to try and get rid of as many of us as possible, especially starting with seniors. The treatment that we got was ridiculous. The methods by which they dealt with us were absolutely ridiculous. And if you didn't feel that was evil enough and horrific enough, the information that you're going to receive tonight is probably really going to piss you off and get you really sick. So that's why tonight we have with us an entire panel of wonderful guests. We have with us the members of Truthstream, Joe and Scott. We've got Frank Prieb with us. And somewhere along the line is Dr. David Martin. We lost his camera. Hopefully he's still there. He'll come back. But welcome, everybody. This is going to be an interesting show. It's going to be a very rough show emotionally for a lot of people, and it's going to be a situation whereby a lot of people are going to be awakened to exactly what transpired, where it came from, how it came about, and how exactly we move forward from here. So welcome, everybody. How are you all doing?
Great.
Doing good, Mark.
From Kansas City, doing very well. Thank you.
Dr. Martin, are you there? Or
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
All right.
If you'd like
Trying
to
solve that problem as we speak.
okay. If you want to do it the easy way, you could leave and come back in. We will hold the spot for you.
I think I'm going to do that.
But anyway,
Thanks for putting this together, Mark. We really appreciate it, and Frank for making things happen. It does take a lot of teamwork to do events like this, so it's very appreciated for you guys.
absolutely. Well, we couldn't have done it without you guys. You know, Frank getting in touch with Dr. Martin, you guys for bringing me on your show and introducing me to Frank and Debbie, and it never would have happened had it not been for that. So,
Yeah,
and this is when we talk about unity in and amongst the truthers and the patriots, folks. This is exactly what we're talking about. Everybody working together.
Unity and community.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's very, very important. So hopefully we'll have Dr. Martin back here in a sec, and we shall move forward with this.
Beautiful.
Because he is our keynote speaker of the night.
Yeah, he has a way of putting things together quite articulately.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So there's a lot that he has to divulge. And here he is. And there he
Try
is.
again.
There you go. We sees you and we hears you.
Well, the good news is I'm now on my phone because for whatever reason, my computer has decided it doesn't want to let me be on there. So there you go. We're on the phone.
Maybe your computer's gone over to the other side.
Exactly right. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. I'm just going to kill this so it doesn't keep trying to. It doesn't keep trying to get my computer on here because that's not helping anybody at all. So there you go. Now we're here.
Excellent.
The light from your monitor was great. You're a little bit in the dark.
Yeah, well, we got a little bit there.
We're all a little bit in the dark,
Right.
From time to time, so it's understandable.
Well, the people who are really in the dark are the masses around the world who really, truly don't understand what happened. Now, for those of you who don't know Dr. Martin, he's chairman of MCAM and RASA. And basically, would I be incorrect in summing it up as basically you are a forensic auditor?
I don't know that I've ever heard that term applied to what I do, but I've never met anybody who can figure out what to use as a term to describe. So I'll live with whatever term somebody wants.
Okay. Well, the discussion for tonight is something that you've spoken about for years already.
Yes.
And revealed untold horrors to the governments and to the general population. And now it's our turn. So why don't you give us a little background on yourself, and then let's move forward into the discussion of COVID.
Certainly, Mark. If I'm not going to bore everybody with the background all the way back, but my first congressional testimony was in 1983 for the Senate Armed Services Committee. And I have been working in a number of areas since then. Relevant to this, my background, I was on the faculty of medical school at the University of Virginia. But prior to that, I was very involved in uncovering a lot of the information that became what the public knew as the Iran-Contra scandal back in the 1980s. In the 1990s, I ran the Treaty Restricted Technology Transfer Program that used an enormous amount of work in the former Soviet Union and all of the Axis powers that ended the Second World War, where I was involved in helping move technology around the world in the kind of post-Reagan administration efforts to make technology transfer more fluid across the globe. And it is in that context, Mark, where I actually got exposed first to the depth and breadth of the biological weapons programs that were happening in the United States and all over the world. Notably, in 2001, on the eve of the anthrax terror outbreak, I alerted the public to the fact that the U.S. military had acquired 300 million doses of ciprofloxacin for anthrax, and that was in May, before the September attack. And as everybody can figure out, if you order 300 million doses of a drug that's never been used in the general population, it is indicative that you might be thinking that something might happen to the general population. And so that was when it became very evident that the scale of the biological weapons programs funded here in the United States were far more egregious than the FOIA requests that came out when we actually started seeing, the aerosolized toxin exposure across San Francisco, the New York subway bombings that happened many times, where the Defense Department introduced lethal.
Yep. Okay,
We
Dr.
have
Morton. Yeah,
documented
I'm
evidence.
sorry to interrupt.
We have.
Your audio had dropped out, and your audio is breaking up a lot. I hate to ask you to do this.
Oh, I'm
mind
sorry.
dropping out one more time and coming back, because you have too much important information to relate for it to be broken up like that.
Okay, I'll try to come.
Give it one more shot. Frank, let's talk to you a little bit, okay? Because you've known Dr. Morton for a long time, you've dealt with him, and Debbie's over there watching it as this goes on. Talk to us a little bit about what you do and your relationship with Dr. Morton.
Yeah. So before I met Dr. Martin, I had spent many, many years in the telecommunications market selling equipment to all the cable
Try
TV.
again.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Okay.
All right,
no,
we there?
Yes, we are there.
Yeah.
So you can, I was just having Frank fill us in a little bit on himself, then we'll come back to you in a second.
Oh, wonderful.
All right,
Go ahead, Frank.
So as I was saying, involved in the telecommunications industry, selling all the equipment to the cable operators, telephone operators that provide video platforms. And what I told a senator one time, I sold the equipment that allowed the propaganda that you watch in your television set. So I did that for 40 plus years and got involved in more health and nutrition. As this situation developed in 2019 into 2020, Debbie and I got introduced to some people who had David Martin on their podcast. So that was Keith. No, that was not Keith Norris. It was Michelle Norris who had David on. When I saw that triggered something in me that said, no, this gentleman has got something to say, and he has some experience in the things he's saying, and he's opening up a lens and an aperture into a condition that we're being exposed to that was not being discussed by many people. So I said to Debbie, I said, we have to follow this. And so what I did was to follow, share, introduce other people into what David was doing, talking to people that I knew in my own circle. And Debbie had become friends on Facebook with Kim. And we were in the vicinity in Virginia. And Debbie said, we're about, 20 minutes from where Kim Martin and David Martin live. I said, really? I said, we had our dog with us. And I said, well, maybe ping her and see if we can work out some kind of an introduction. Lo and behold, they gave us an hour of time at a certain slot. And we went there and were just welcomed with open arms and spent 3 hours there having just amazing conversation about really our lives. Really wasn't about COVID. Our lives, our relationships, things we're doing. And then they invited us to a workshop, which we couldn't attend, but we came in March a couple months later. And that took me on a path of interaction with David and Kim and other people connected to them, where I was magnetized and I wanted to share and be actionable in the things that I was developing in myself to other people. So a couple of things led to activities and support of their Fully Live Academy, Fully Live .world environment, and the 12 senses. And I'm sure we'll hit on a little bit about how the 12 senses actually has a relationship into our current times right now. But that's kind of my background. And I just have to put a plug in for the 2 hockey teams I play for here, the White Walkers, and I have a skate with Bob, because I turned 69 in about a month, and I'm playing as much hockey today as I did, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago. So
it keeps you young.
definitely keeps me young. I'm going to grow my hair out so I can develop a good mullet, you know? Okay, that's my story. And I know Debbie's watching. She wanted to be on here, but she had a conflict. So Debbie is as close to and as a partner in my crimes around this whole scenario.
Well, we're all partners in crime in this ongoing war that we're in, which hopefully is nearing an end. But let's get back to Dr. Martin. Okay, so you'd gone through a lot of what you became aware of with the government's violating a whole bunch of treaties.
Yeah.
And then that eventually led into your discoveries in regard to COVID.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't use the term discovery necessarily. And I wouldn't use that term because since 2001, since the anthrax outbreak, I've been monitoring all 68 scheduled biological weapon pathogens programs in the United States and around the world. As you know, or you may know, the coronavirus model was selected in 1967 as the ideal platform to use for domestic and international modification of weaponizing a pathogen for the purpose of creating large-scale public fear, terrorism, and ultimately sickness and death. So I wouldn't use the term discovery because I was trying to get people alerted to this, with publications going back to as early as 2002, briefings that were going on all over the world, including, in 2005, addressing the biological weapons program globally in a summit I did in Tehran in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so this situation is one where, I think I would love to embrace a world in which your optimistic statement of maybe we're towards the end of it. I'm going to tell you that if anything, we are at best, on the absolute best of days, we're probably the winter of Valley Forge, and we've got 10 years of war still ahead of us. This is not anywhere close to over. And the reason it's not close to over is people think it started with COVID. It didn't. We have had since 1953 a eugenics program that has been established and has been supported by the United States government. That program has been carefully masked under organizations like the National Institutes of Health, like the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease, which is Anthony Fauci's home turf until the end of this most recent terror campaign. But if you look at how many people have ultimately been murdered by this organization, I wish your number of the 7 million you had on your screen was even remotely close to the right number. That number does not even begin to touch how many people have been killed by individuals who, in the name of globalism, in the name of what they call public health, which is actually public extermination, in the name of a number of things, has led to untold numbers of deaths and overt destruction around the world. We have to remember, even in this most recent COVID scheme, the use of remdesivir in the United States was second after it had already been deployed in the Ebola outbreak in Africa. And it was so lethal. Mark, its lethality rate was 53%. So it was more lethal than Ebola. And we were injecting it into people. And the death rate, notably in the publication, is noted to be 53% mortality. And it says, despite viral load. So what that meant was, Mark, we were putting remdesivir into people who didn't have Ebola and murdering them. And the death rate was 53%. And it was so unethical that the World Health Organization actually terminated the use of remdesivir because they said it was too unethical to use. And it was the first drug of choice that we used to murder people in nursing homes. So, and in hospitals and all over the place. The COVID protocol was actually a known lethal agent, known to be lethal, known to be toxic, known so egregiously to be lethal that even the World Health Organization said its use was unethical. So the problem that we have is people think that the COVID story is even a story. It's not. It's a cameo appearance in a feature film. And that feature film has been going from 1953 to the present. And there has not been a single, and listen carefully, not a single public act taken yet to disband the bioweapons programs at BSL 3 and 4 labs across universities in the United States. There's not been a single action taken. And we currently are living in a period of time today where we have 63 live weaponized pathogens ready for public release. And the United States Army has even patented, and I wish this wasn't true, but it is, a rocket-propelled grenade to shoot across active live populations to anonymously disperse active pathogens that have, quote, blast-resistant survivability. And what that means in plain English is they've actually perfected these things so that you can shoot an RPG across, I don't know, a stadium, across a train yard, across a town, across a school, and you can disperse this stuff aerosolized like we saw with anthrax. And you can do that with impunity, and there is zero effort on anyone's part. Nobody in the current administration, nobody in any elected position, no court, no anyone who's done a single act to stop what I just said, not one. So the war isn't even begun because we as a people have not even recognized that there's a fight to engage.
Now I'm making an arbitrary leap here, but considering when you said this started back in 1953, which is even a year before I was born, could any of this be tagged to or attached to Operation Paperclip?
Could it be? Of course it is. It is part of the eugenics program that started with the Carnegie Eugenics Office that was established in the early 1900s, which is now operating with impunity as Cold Spring Harbor Labs. It is currently operating. I mean, the eugenics office never stopped. And you know, it was out of that in 1953, we got things like, allegedly, the discovery and the description of DNA, which was not a real thing. It was a model that was used to describe the digitization of the human population. People talk about transhumanism as though it's a new phenomenon today. Transhumanism happened the minute Watson and Crick said that life was the substance of nucleic acids only. And that arrogant, foolish, and reckless comment turned into what is now a 70-year hegemony of looking at humanity through the lens of what is in fact the most degrading approach to looking at humans, saying that we're nothing more than meat puppets walking around with biochemistry happening inside of our meat suits. tragically, that worldview is the worldview that gives rise to what we currently experienced in what we call a public health emergency, which was not. It was not a public health emergency. It was an act of war against humanity. It is one of now over 200 documented cases since 1953. And we still aren't even having the right conversation. We're still talking about it as though COVID was a thing.
Now, go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
With regard to remdesivir, it's my understanding that Anthony Fauci had a huge financial stake in the drug. He had several options to choose from as far as the federal protocols. That was the one he chose. It was the most lethal, least effective, and the most financially beneficial. Is that true?
I'm sorry, I didn't miss. I missed the first half of your question. So if you could just restate the first half.
Sure. It's my understanding with regard to remdesivir that Anthony Fauci had a big financial stake in the success of the drug. And, when he was confronted with the option of the federal protocol for COVID, he had some terrible options, but remdesivir was among the worst. And it would appear that he chose that because it was financially beneficial.
Well, there's no question that is very much the case. Every choice that was made was for economic reasons, not for health or the scientific merit. As a matter of fact, that publication on the lethality of remdesivir was known in 2018, so everybody knew it was going to be deadly. It turns out that the incentives, which were $25,000 to $50,000 a corpse at hospitals and at clinics and at nursing homes, where the incentive to use it was actually a direct financial incentive for murder for hire. It was, listen to what I just said, murder for hire. Every single person in a hospital, clinic, or nursing home that got remdesivir was a murder for hire. It was not a treatment. And every person administering remdesivir was actively involved in preventable reckless homicide. And not a single one of those things has ever been held to account. But your point is a fair one, because if we go back and look at the fact that under 21 Code of Federal Regulations, section 50.20 to 23, there is a requirement that before any declared emergency medical countermeasure is ever deployed, there has to be an independent review where, and I'm quoting from the statute itself, where there has to be an independent review where people have no financial interest. And guys, that never happened. It never happened. Every single person who was associated with the promulgation of this terror campaign was double dipping on the terror. They actually were creating the problem, and then they lined up the economic gain for the people who ultimately benefited from it. So your point is well taken, but the fact is, once again, that's an emblematic symptom of a disease we're not even discussing. And that's the part that frustrates me to this day. We are now 5 years post what we call the event, and we still haven't started the first conversation, which is, what are we doing about shutting down the system that allows biological weapons to be used against our society? What are we doing to shut that down? And the answer today, right now, is we are doing nothing. No statutory action taken, no legal action taken, no accountability taken, none. And that's the heartbreak, because the heartbreak is, we're pretending as though we've kind of learned our lesson. We haven't even shown up with a crayon in kindergarten.
Wow.
It's a situation whereby basically this was our doing here in the United States, correct?
Yep.
And so all of the BS that was put out there and presented in the mainstream media and from the government, et cetera, about wet markets in Wuhan and bats and cats and rats and everything else is all just a crock.
Well, so let's just make it really simple. In 2016, in the spring of 2016, the National Academy of Sciences published a paper that said WIV1, which is Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1, was, and I'm quoting from the cover headline of the article in the National Academy of Sciences. So that's the deep research that I'm doing. I'm actually reading the headline where it says WIV1 poised for human emergence from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And at the end of the article, 3 important things exist. Number 1, at the end of the article, this is 2016. Just for people who are sitting there going, no, this happened in 2019. It happened in 2020. No, it didn't. February 2016, Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1 poised for human emergence out of Chapel Hill. And at the last acknowledgement section of that paper, they thank the bat lady, Zheng Lishi, the woman who was famously at Wuhan. They thank her for supplying the lethal respiratory pathogen that UNC took to make more weaponized than it was in Wuhan. They thank her for that. And then they do 2 things which are remarkable. They institute a review board, which is an ethical review board on the research. They institute a review board to review the protocol of putting a lethal pathogen into in vivo models. So that's number 1. And that happened 2014, 2015, and 2016 during the gain of function moratorium. So let's get really clear on the fact this happened in the US while the gain of function moratorium was on. So that's when it happened. And it was prepared for global release. And it even states that there was a second review board impaneled to review the illegality of doing the research in the first place in violation of the moratorium. So they reviewed the illegal research, and then they reviewed the illegality of the illegal research, and they came to the conclusion that it was legitimate.
Is there any chance that any of this, is there any shared blame? In other words, we've known for forever that chemical weapons and biological weapons have been going on since at least World War I. Were we the only ones doing this?
We are not the only ones, but we are the most aggressive. The United States has the most aggressive biological and chemical weapons programs on the planet. We are not only doing it domestically, but we are actually funding the work in other countries. And all of the cover stories that we have where the CIA allegedly has cover operations and laboratories all over the world are comic and nonsensical. The vast majority of these biological weapons programs are at United States universities. And the reason why no member of Congress and no member of the Senate is willing to take this issue on is because the graft and corruption that is laundered through universities right now is how our political system launders money. We will not see this end until public universities have their books doged. And you start looking at, God forbid, if Elon Musk actually went and looked at UNC Chapel Hill and asked the question, how much money went into the bioweapons program at UNC Chapel Hill? Let's talk about that in public. Let's talk about that. But you know what doesn't happen? That.
Right.
And you know why it doesn't happen? Because every elected member of Congress, every member of the Senate, and everybody in the executive branch knows that if you pulled the first edge of the corner of the tiniest level of the peel on the onion off of this one, we'd find out that we are responsible for genocide untold scale that has been promulgated since allegedly the world decided at the end of Nuremberg that we shouldn't be doing this stuff.
David, we've heard a lot about the bioweapons labs or biolabs and genomic labs in Ukraine. Given our recent history with Ukraine and certainly Europe's obsession with Ukraine and the larger war that it portends, was that a part of the COVID story at all, as far as the development?
Of course, but once again, let's remember, it's not the COVID story. It's a bioweapons story. COVID is merely a cameo appearance in the long arc story. The story is a eugenics program using biological weapons promulgated by the United States. That is the story. And COVID is one of the acts in the play. But let's go back to your question, because remember that if you go back and look at the board of Burisma, which is famously the Hunter Biden scandal prior to the administration even going in, But if you go back and look at the board of Burisma, you'll realize that the country of the Ukraine had its largest commercial enterprise managed by a board of directors and a corporate leadership that was all ex-CIA, all ex-NSA, all ex-special programs, special access programs in the United States. The largest allegedly Ukrainian company wasn't Ukrainian. It was a CIA front corporation. Burisma is not a Ukrainian company. Go look at its membership. Look at its board of directors. Look at its shareholders. Look at its transactions. People don't bother to actually look at the facts. See, this is, and Joe, I've said this to you many times. I've never met a fact that is compelling enough to overwhelm a belief. We have believed the BS that we've been told about the ethics and morality of the United States and our moral leadership in the world and all kinds of other things. We want to believe it. We want to. But unfortunately, the facts indict the fact that there was not a shred of plausibility that said that the Ukraine was anything other than the front door of the combined Austrian gas and U.S. biological weapons programs. It is the reason why we wanted to make sure that we actually provoked Russia, provoked it. This whole nonsense that there is provocation. I mean, people who can't read understand that obviously whatever they think they hear on the news is what they think is real. But they forget that at the end of the Cold War, the terms and conditions that ended the Cold War made it abundantly clear that NATO was not supposed to do any eastward expansion. In fact, it says not to expand by an inch. But what we did was we put our biological weapons labs in Ukraine. And then we wonder why Putin might be a little upset. I don't know. Why wouldn't he be upset? And what if the largest corporation that's in the country is actually a front for CIA directors? Might that be a problem if you are actually historically a geopolitical, at least adversary or a peer? Of course it would be. But we don't talk about these things because we don't want to. We don't want to face the fact that we've been living in an illusion. And that illusion is so compelling that we're afraid that if one piece of it fails, then the house falls down around us. And we're terrified of that world. And so what we do is we keep running like the Wile E. Coyote off the edge of the cliff, going, no, we're still the greatest, we're still the greatest. And we're running past clouds, but we know the moment we look down, we're going to splat at the bottom of the cliff, and there's an anvil over our head that's going to hit us too. That's the problem. And that's the giant stinking problem that people don't want to face.
So essentially what you're saying, with everything that's been, I won't use the term discovered again, but everything that you've relayed, there is no plausible deniability anywhere.
No, not a shred.
So
there's not even a question. The blood is on the hands of the murderers, and we're sitting there going, yeah, but maybe they just got some raw meat. Like you're literally watching blood drip off a knife of the guy who stabbed somebody going, well, but do we know that it was that knife? You know, you're just sitting there like the dumbest questions that humans can ask and answer is what we're doing because we don't want to face what is in fact the parsimonious answer, which is the crime was committed. It was admitted to the rationale for the crime. Listen, September 18th, 2019, the World Health Organization said we're going to have a lethal respiratory pathogen released so that by September 2020, we have the world demanding a global vaccine. That was a stated, published, documented, page 8 of World at Risk, Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, World Health Organization publication, September 18th, 2019. They said they're going to have a global release of a lethal respiratory pathogen so that by September 2020, the public accepts a universal vaccine. Now, I don't know how you can make that more difficult to understand than what I just laid out. They told us what they were going to do. They told us why they were going to do it. And they told us the timeline for when it was going to happen. Which part of that is a mystery? But to this day, not a single person other than the bald guy talking to you right now has even mentioned what I just said.
A big part of that
Yeah.
directly relates to the business that I came out of and my colleagues, putting out the misinformation. And I've said for a long time that probably the most dangerous arm of the cabal was mainstream media, because we get our information directly, especially on things like this, directly from, in one form or another, either local, state, or federal government,
Right.
World Health, et cetera, and just regurgitate what's given to us with no investigation, no background check, no nothing. And from what you stated, all of this is out in black and white. So it could have been
That's why when people say I've done research or investigation, I find it actually offensive. This is not research, it's literacy.
It's all right there.
Freaking read the letters on the page. It's not Dave Martin, the wizard, who is great at sleuthing this out. It's Dave Martin who bothered to read a document. Del Bigtree, before he brought me on air the first time I talked on his program, Del Bigtree spent about 5 minutes disqualifying what I was going to say as it may be just Dave Martin's theories. You know what you've never heard in 5 years? My theories. I haven't even stated my opinion. I have merely offered the black and white evidence, and everybody goes, well, that couldn't be right. Let's go back to the theory.
That's the plausible deniability right there. It's almost like P.T. Barnum. You know, you've got a sucker born every minute.
Yeah.
And the people go and they buy it. And we really do live in a world where, with all the information that's readily available to everybody, they don't bother to go and do the research. They want these people sitting in front of the camera to tell them everything. And that's where we lose a lot. Now, if we backtrack a little bit on this, dealing with this pandemic, how far back did it really go? Practical planning wise, in order to
1999. It was when NIAID decided that after Ralph Baric succeeded in moving the coronavirus model out of the common GI and respiratory symptoms that it had been associated with, and successfully got it to target heart tissue. And you heard what I just said. Target the heart. Now, why? Just pause for a second. Why would anybody want to take something that created a common cold and potential gastroenteritis? Why would anybody want to make it target a heart?
Only one reason.
Like that's horrible. But that's in fact what happened. And that was in 1999. And from 1999 to 2002, there was an effort to make the chimera of coronavirus become a cardiovascular and respiratory weapon after it had been associated with a gastrointestinal irritation, but they made it into a weapon. So the first outbreak of SARS in 2000 and 2001, and then again in 2003 when we actually called it SARS. If you go back and you look at those developments, 2002 is when the patent on the infectious replication defective clone of coronavirus was first patented. 2003 is when we saw the outbreak in public of the first outbreak of what we called SARS 1.0. As you'll recall, we were all supposed to fear that. It didn't kill many people and it didn't harm many people because it was actually a test of a weapon system. And in 2005, Ralph Baric at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill made the statement that coronavirus was, and I'm quoting, biowarfare enabling technology. Biowarfare enabling technology. That is what was stated in 2005, and not a single person, no one on this show, nobody on any other show, nobody in the media, nobody wanted to hear when I said, shouldn't we be concerned with bio-warfare enabling technology in violation of 18 United States Code? That is a felony. We are admitting to a felony that has a 10-year in prison, $100 million fine if you actually are convicted, and we don't care. We're just going to be okay with that. So this particular planning got started officially using exactly the weapon of choice in 2002, going into April of 2003. So this was 22 years in planning. And Mark, that's the reason why I said we're at Valley Forge and we've got 10 years of the revolution ahead of us. Because the fact of the matter is, people think it's over. We have not yet begun to fight.
Now, when exactly was it that because you've been talking about this for a long time, that you addressed the European Parliament?
That was the European Parliament address was, I think, May of 2023, if I recall correctly.
Oh, okay, so that wasn't that long ago. But
no, but my first briefing on this, as I said in my Brussels Parliament speech, was, when I did the address in 2003 to the Parliament when Denmark was acceding to the European Union presidency.
So you outlaid this weaponization of not necessarily the COVID scenario, but just the weaponization of biological elements and biological weaponry publicly back in 2003.
Yep.
And it was totally ignored.
Totally ignored. And I have to say, remember, COVID doesn't exist. It's a set of symptoms. Those symptoms have been part of the human condition for as long as there have been humans. I have all of the pharmacopoeia of Ibn Sina, the very famous Middle Eastern doctor who actually has COVID described in books that go back, 600 years. So COVID is a set of symptoms. It isn't a thing. It's never been a disease. It never will be a disease. The issue is the World Health Organization in February of 2020 decided to take this crock pot full of symptoms, throw them together and say, if you have 7 or more of these symptoms, you have COVID. But remember, COVID has never had a diagnosis, ever.
It's never been.
It is it's a differential diagnosis of symptoms, but it does not have any diagnosis. The reason is because many of us have been exposed to the biological weapon, and many of us have not had a lot of symptoms associated with it, which is the reason why we don't have a clinical diagnosis. We have a symptom diagnosis. So COVID does not exist. It's not a thing. It's actually a marketing campaign for the terror program that made everybody go, yes, but I had COVID. No, you didn't. You had potentially a cold or a flu or a fever or whatever else. No one had COVID. Nobody died of COVID. What they died of was a biological weapon and the interventions done around the biological weapon, which themselves, like remdesivir, like the hyperoxygenation using respirators, like all of those things, they died from the interventions that were done and the medical countermeasures. No one died of COVID, period. Nobody.
And the miraculous part about it, which you also stated publicly, was, I believe it was 2 days after first of all, you can't patent something that's naturally occurring, but 2 days after this was patented, so was the cure for it, the alleged cure for it.
The audio is breaking up so much I can't hear the question. Can you try that one more time?
Yeah. Which you had also stated publicly I think, also a number of years ago, was the fact that 2 days after, first of all, you can't patent something that's naturally occurring,
Right.
and yet they did. And 2 days later, I believe it was Moderna patented a vaccine for it.
So yeah, the point you're making is that the CDC filed what they said was the patent on the human coronavirus isolated from humans in April of 2003. 2 days after that application was filed in the patent office, Sequoia Pharmaceuticals filed the patent on the vaccine for the thing that had been allegedly discovered 2 days earlier. Yes.
I mean, that's really some mental acuity there, wouldn't you say?
Well, listen, it's an outright admission of the crime, right? That's what it is. We should call it what it is. It's the admission of the crime.
Now, you can't patent something that's naturally occurring.
No,
So
that's
how exactly did that come about?
it's illegal. Yeah, it's illegal to do that. That's correct.
So then how were they able to slip through the patent?
Well, not slip through. They bribed the patent office. There's a record of the payment. There's a handwritten note on the side of the document that actually shows when they actually backdated the application after it had been rejected as unpatentable on 2 occasions. So the great news is the public printed record is the subject of one of the shows that I did back when Frank was watching Butterflies of the Week, where we actually showed the actual paperwork that shows the CDC effectively bribing the patent office to break its own rules to issue that patent.
So there's really truly enough blame to be spread around everywhere.
Oh, it is a conspiracy in the legal definition of racketeering, not in the theoretical CIA mind control misuse of that term. It is a criminal conspiracy of corporations acting in concert to terrorize the public.
Yeah, and Mark, this carries through many administrations, and as David said, no one has stepped up to the plate to do the obvious. No AG. Okay, now there are brush fires of legal activities going on, Oklahoma, many areas. But again, he mentioned universities. So the Bayh-Dole Act many years ago opened up a kind of a double dipping effect of this biological research activity, and no one gets the story of, well, what are they actually researching? So that goes on. Now, if we take the money out of that, that helps. But we have multiple administrations. So the onus is on ourselves and these fake politicians, if you want to call it, some of the people who come in as appointed looking for the bad guys, they're just to blame, because guess what? They all know what's going on. As David said, all this information has been public over decades. And like he didn't even mention Event 201, that tabletop exercise has enough admission of activity, just like the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board information. I mean, it's ludicrous. It's been put into the public domain. I know David's mentioned this along, and Joe and Scott and myself, we regurgitate this stuff all the time, moving it through the channels. But even within the congressional, the executive branches, they know. They got the Fauci dossier in, I believe it was April of 2020, that outlined 27 pages of the violations of federal codes, as well as the 185 pages of 5,000 patents in the coronavirus sector. I mean, our own people who are supposed to be protecting us had all the evidence right in front of them. April 2020.
You just went into what I was going to step right into, because this is, after I said that there's enough blame here to go around, you're talking basically going from, and we're talking legislative, judicial, and executive,
Yep.
You're talking from the Clinton administration, Bush administration, the Obama administration.
Oh, I think you can go back farther, as David
Yeah,
said.
but I mean, Reagan is the one that appointed Fauci, so you can go back as far as you want to go. I mean, this whole thing was an organized campaign that definitely, starts with Fauci showing up at NIAID in 1984. I mean, that's how we got AIDS. That's how we got a bunch of the other things. So it's been around for a long time. And hey, guys, my internet is absolutely dying. I'm only hearing probably 5% of anything that's being said. I hope you can hear what I've said.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Okay. But I'm going to cut out because I can't stay engaged because I can't hear what's being said.
Right.
Do you want to try and go out and come back in?
Oh, I mean, I've tried a bunch of times and my phone now is about dead. So I think I'm going to pass. But you guys, I mean, Frank and obviously the Truthstream guys, you guys know how many times you've bashed your head through the wall with me. And we'll try to get some time when I get a reliable connection.
Absolutely.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate your time.
You bet. All right. Thanks,
and the
guys.
information I've shared.
Always
Take
a
care.
pleasure, David.
Wow. So we're in a situation that, look, he just brought up a very valid point, which is something I know we've all discussed a bunch of times, where the American public has really become the absentee landlords of this corporation. I've said this a billion times, we're the CEOs, CFOs, COOs of this corporation that we've been living under. And yet we've allowed our employees to do these types of things to us with malice aforethought, just because we can't get involved. Let somebody else take care of it. And now we're trying to play catch up after all the horses have left the barn. Where do we move forward with this? Because that's pretty grim outlook that Dr. Martin put forward with, we're just at the beginning of the war.
Well, I think the biggest thing I'm taking away is the fact that, David's not an oracle. He just bothered to read the documentation, We're in a hell of a state. We're not paying attention. Every obstacle has been put in our place, but was it even necessary? We're anesthetized by, cultural trends and so on and so forth, that it makes it very easy to facilitate these kinds of crimes. I think this started, 1947 rings a bell, when the OSS became the CIA, and every bit of this just is teeming with the footprint of intelligence organizations, whether it's our own or others. I don't even know if you can make a distinction anymore. But
this is why I brought up and asked him about that, if this could be linked to Operation Paperclip, because it really does reek.
Oh yeah,
of what was done during World War II.
Well, that was pretty much 1947 as well. You're right.
Yes.
The dullest
Well,
part.
to give a little legacy into that, David did a presentation at Church of Glad Tidings way back, 2021, called "How Did We Get Here?" And part of the front side of this was what was on record as the inventor of the pustule vaccine approach. And so, we're all the way back to the 1800s in this. But what was interesting was that as that experimentation and the Pasteur effect and others started to get involved, other people started to look at, well, wait a minute, if this is an approach that can get in front of what we think are viruses, okay, maybe we have something to work with. As they went through this into the mid 1800s, the people funding the vaccine, what became the vaccine industry, were life insurance companies. So if you want to look at a progression of how to control some type of runway of life of a human or an animal, then they kind of figured out that if we had something to give the mammals that would either restrict, put at a deficit, cause other problems, now we have a way of control, and now we can actually look at the lifespan. So remember, the lifespan of a worker in the late 1800s and into the 1900s was about 30 years, hence your mortgage. So all these things were building up way before 1947. These were just links that once they got wrapped around the higher level of concept of controlling people, eugenics, and depopulation, now they have mechanisms and programs, and they built protocols, and they built allopathic medical systems, and they built insurance systems, all working into what we experienced 5 years ago as something. As David said, you have pieces of this. So when he mentioned ciprofloxacin being purchased by the Department of Defense in May of 2001, okay, that was May. The thing happened in September. 300 million doses. That's in his book, Coup de 12. David outlines the whole progression of what was going on at that point in time within the enterprise that bought the presidency. So that was a false flag and a process to what? To launder money, steal money, so that they had money, so that they could fund people going into the 2008 election. Anyways, I kind of digress, but there's such a back history into using how to manipulate nature into how we make money off of it and control lifespan. Pretty easy concept if you look at it.
Gosh, Frank, so how far into the 1800s? I mean, you took us back to what, the early 1800s?
Yeah, I think early 1800. I mean, David has one slide. I don't have it in front of me. One slide that's like 1805 when kind of this was going. Remember, the dental industry in 1856 was building their empire off putting metals in your mouth and such, where mercury and silver were being used. That goes back to 1856.
This just takes me back to the early work with Rudolf Steiner, and I'm always scratching my head wondering what was informing Steiner at the time. And this makes a really good case for exactly what was informing Steiner. You know, yeah. And he portended the whole idea of technocracy, and kind of laid the stage for where we're at now. He talked about the coming of Ahriman, kind of a thing. But if you read those works and you look at what's happening now, it's a preamble for what we're experiencing anyway.
Oh yeah, well, as Joe's outlined many times, we talk about the 12 senses and how far back some of the elements of exposure to our 12 senses and how they've been reduced go back, 8,000 years. I mean, there's many stories that go into each various cranial nerve that kind of the who done it, when they did it, what it was related to in terms of diminishing our capability. So a lot of times, and this, Mark, we kind of touched on this in the last go around, when a lot of people go, how can we be either blind to all this? How can we accept this? How do we build a belief of all this? How do we let this go? Like, oh, this is too egregious to actually think that some groups of people could be doing this. That kind of mentality. Well, if we're operating at 2.5 senses, overall populations operating about 2.5 to 3 senses out of 12 that we've been born with, that's less than 1/3 of capacity. So it's pretty easy to figure out why we're operating way down here and letting all this nefarious activity happen. And that's why I brought up all elected officials know all about this. They're just covering up and moving on to the next stage. I mean, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul. You look at all the grandstanders who started in the elements of freedom fighters, and most of them have created businesses out of this condition that has developed. So again, back to David's point, no one has picked up the ball to actually so like he said, if we would eliminate the bioweapons programs, why not? Why spend money on it? Why put people in harm's way? Oh no, we're researching for if something does happen that we'll have the antidote. Bullshit. We haven't come up with any antidote for this stuff. You know, the highest level antidote, I think, to any of these things we've discussed in the symptomology of COVID, okay, is something that you can do bioenergetically. You don't need things to actually clear your system out. You can do it bioenergetically. Scott knows it. Joe knows it. I never got a sniffle through the last 5 years, let alone the last 10 years.
Well, facts being what they are, we've learned, if we haven't learned it by now, we never will. The fact that pharmaceutical companies don't make us well.
Not at all.
Okay. Their idea is to keep us sick so that we keep buying the medicine. That much we've learned. That far we've all come. But when I look at the information that Dr. Martin imparted before he left, and you listen to the laid out atrocities that have been committed against not just the people in the United States, but the population of the world, you have to look at this and wonder where we go at this point, because it's not just plain crimes against humanity. This is, if it was a simple murder case, this falls under murder one. This is premeditated.
Right.
And this is premeditated for the sake of money and, again, of population reduction. And these people are guilty of so many crimes under the Nuremberg codes that you don't even know really where to begin. So
Right.
kind of, where do you think they are going to begin? And once
Well, Mark,
they
I want to say something. So what I love to do is take clips of David speaking, and this one's 1 minute and 11 seconds. And I'm gonna repost this so people can share this, because this is exactly what he was talking about with the funding and the schools. And this is the type of thing I think that needs to get out there. So I'm going to share this, and then we can discuss this, because it's right to the point, because it's hard for people when they're hearing someone come in and out, unfortunately, like David was. But
before you do, I want to ask a question. We can leave it unanswered, but at what point did the eugenicists become so influential? Because clearly that's what happened. I mean, Darwin was a eugenicist.
David talks about that.
Right. I mean, this was clearly
they were just making stuff up, just like 1913. They just created the Federal Reserve. These people in power just use their influence, and
but it's not an appealing pitch,
No,
but
like,
think about
this would appeal to the mentally ill. It's borderline psychotic.
Think about what you're talking about, because Joe just brought up an excellent point that relates to that. Think of what you're talking about. What has been the root of everything, every war that we've been through, all of the things that Dr. Martin just relayed, all of these things relate back to two things that have been with us since mankind began: money and power. It's really what it boils down to. That's really what it boils down to, is just money and power. There is no other reason in the world that we develop biological weapons.
But you would think that there would be plenty of opportunity to gain both money and power for the benefit of mankind. This is particularly concerned with the degradation and the
Destruction.
downfall of mankind. It's parasitic on one end and predatory on the other, and it's soulless. And somehow this became the drumbeat, the war drum behind this movement. They captured intelligence, governments, so on and so forth. I mean, we've been dealing with this for a very long time.
And blackmail is part of it as well.
Yeah, and it's at work right now. I mean, we're looking at the controversy with RFK and the blackmail that's impeding his efforts with Maha.
Right. So let me just play this before because I know the audience is probably wondering what the hell this is. So let me here's present and share the screen. Okay. I don't know now, is that something that you have to pull up, Mark, or is that
if you
have to
can't,
allow it? I think you have to allow it in. It's ready when you want. Okay.
Come on.
Once you bring that in, then I can play it. It's a Twitter post.
If for whatever reason, I was saying before presenting a screen, remove other media. Okay, I can remove that. Let's try this now.
Everybody's on the edge of their seat.
I know I am.
For whatever reason.
You know what? What if I send it to you? I'll send it to you, and maybe you can bring it up.
Okay.
How about that?
Hey, while you do that, so Scott, here's something that David put this meme together, this slide, and he's used this almost from the beginning, but it covers many things. And he does it in the 6 lenses, that he's talked about. The first one in terms of what like commodity, which is the yellow segment, matter and energy. So right here, I don't know if this shows, if you can read that right there. So the first one right there is separation and fear. Separation and fear. When we talk about eugenics, you can take the fear of scarcity. So back then, they didn't know all that much about, as populations and industrial activities were going, they felt like population was going up too high for the resources available. So scarcity was something that many of these things have a foundation upon. And if you have the fear, you're going to do things that, one, as going back to the money and the power. So who runs these programs? The people with money and with power. And then they use the people down below. So the other one he has is distinction and isolation. That's in the community, the custom and culture. What did they do to us in early 2020? Isolation. They distinguished who. So the experiment was who's going to stay home, who's going to mask up, who's going to stay 6 feet, who's going to who. Next one in knowledge, dominion and suppression. Hey, we talk about who is having the overarching control over other people. Governors. The first letter the governors wrote out in the second week of March. Okay. They told everyone what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And that wasn't written by a single governor. It was written by some authority who sent it out to every government. That's called suppression. We look at hierarchy and punishment. We chose who would stay open, who would get paid. And if you didn't, you were punished. Subjugation and addiction. Okay, people were addicted to the television and their computer screens and Zoom during that time frame. They were subjugated. That was the technology. It was just non-ending. The actual repetition by the news every day. Here's a a case count, a body count, things like that. And then lastly, in the well-being section, obsolescence and enslavement. We're obsolete. They don't need us. They have AI coming in and they have other things, and we're enslaved to a process called mandates. It was a great experiment. As he said, we're in the very, very early innings because they have 64 other pathogens ready for action. And he talked about the flyover disbursement grenade.
Right.
He mentioned that when we were in Oklahoma to the crowd after the Oklahoma, what was called the Oklahoma COVID. It was a testimonial of various people. Okay. But he went into that to say, no, we're in the early innings. And have we progressed? I mean, he did something back in 22 called, what were the 6 lessons we didn't learn? Oh my gosh, I'll post that tomorrow. But, when we're looking at where are we going to go, it all starts with ourselves. And we can't allow any of these politicians to get away with nothing. They haven't done anything. What they've been doing is basically wallpapering us with actions of economic, of finding all this money laundering activities. We're not dealing with the real thing. We're not. And the general public is probably 80% oblivious to this. They're all caught up in, take Trump and take Musk and export them, deport them. I mean, we have lowered our humanity to such a level. Since the election, we have gotten worse, not better, as humans. We are like going down, we're dumpster diving right now. And if these politicians don't be accountable to themselves, which they're not, I mean, we've seen what Rand Paul does, and he had the letter that David refers to,
Right,
that NIH sent to the University of North Carolina during the moratorium, allowing them continuation into their program because it was funded. And, by the way, do it in vivo. That's inside of mammals. Okay, that was 2014.
right.
Our whole Congress had that letter, and they just kind of haven't decided to bring it
on
up.
that point, Frank, on that point, I think that's why, and Dave and Mark talk about this with many of their guests, including Rambo and many of the True Stormy Joe, what have you, that it is like there's this movement, this dance, and many in this movement, if you will, believe that there's things going on behind the scene. I mean, you could talk about Mike King and the army of 60,000, that if they were to just come out and just release this information that Rand Paul has access to, it's too much. So hopefully we're getting there.
Why, let me ask you a question. Why is it too much? What's the assumption?
They're titrating people off of their addictions, I think.
They're getting people to think for themselves and get to the point where they're coming out of the brainwash and the minutia to realize the lies, so that when they're watching certain people hung, that they're for it and they're angry about, and they're behind it, that they're not just watching something where they cognitively cannot even connect with what they're watching because they haven't been through the process of the awakening, which is you have to show people, you can't tell them. And these are some of the conversations that Frank and I have off screen, that Mark and I mean, we talked this morning that that we believe that there's something really pivotal happening, by May, because because if the World's Fair is happening sometime in May until July of 2026, and it's the 250-year anniversary of our country, and the fact that we're even having this conversation, we'd all be wiped out if there wasn't something going on. So I'm not saying I know where we're at, Frank, but I don't know. Does this make sense?
I'd love to respond to that.
Please.
I mean, this really points. Human beings are beautiful creatures, but we're really pretty simple and we're rather predictable. And Yuri Bezmenov, you guys are old enough to remember Yuri Bezmenov, KGB defector that talked about the plan to demoralize the United States. And the converse of that, or the other side of that, being Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals, which was a manual on how to prey on these very attributes of humanity. We've been watching this play out, left and right. And that's been center stage for a long, long time. And, we tend to get distracted by the puppet show. So we're attributing these things to the talking heads, but they're all synced to a larger plan, like what Yuri Bezmenov was talking about. That's evidenced when the 4 a.m. script comes out from intelligence, and you see all the news personalities using the same terms,
Mockingbird media,
often the same cadence and everything to deliver what you're receiving as news. It's all
before we get too far afield, I have your video, so let's go to that.
Thank you, Mark. And then this is great. What an open conversation.
Silence on the other side. You've never seen Tucker or Rogan or any of these guys talk about the bioweapons programs happening in the United States under university support, and nobody puts two and two together. When you see an elected official going into Congress, they get $200,000-$300,000 a year salary. They go into Congress, and 10 years later, they have $150 million. Or in the case of a couple more recent, $240 million. Now, Chris, I don't know about you, but it feels like there must be some money laundering going on somewhere because, that's right, we don't want to talk about this. We don't want the public to know that our state universities in America are currently money laundering exercises as slush funds to move money from the federal government to elected officials through the cunning use of lab research that should never be done under any civilized nation on earth. And we don't have any problem with that happening, and not a single person in the media is willing to talk about it.
Well, you know what? It doesn't come more plainly than that.
Yeah.
And we've known for a long time that, and we've discussed it ad nauseum, I think everybody on every platform has discussed the fact that we elect these idiots at $170,000 a year. And after 2 years, all of a sudden they're multimillionaires. Now,
Imagine that.
Yeah. I would love to have that investment plan.
Yeah. Well, shame on us. Shame on us. Maybe we should just not vote for these idiots and let the thing go fallow.
Well, did you guys absorb the idea that graphic, all of those names, these are the biggest beneficiaries, and none of those names seem familiar to me. I don't know if you recognized any of them, but
I was trying to.
State. Yeah.
That leads to the same boat. We both suffer from CSS. Can't
right.
see.
And Frank, were they really even elected?
Good question. I mean, I've watched some things in Kansas where there's been discrepancies and things like that. And, it's what again. I'm going to go back to when Mark started the show with the video about the people that were succumb inside of the hospitals. And what they went through, and that the attendees, nurses, doctors were wearing hazmat suits, and even the patients had to wear masks. I mean, it's sad to see that. And I'm tied to a couple groups in Oklahoma who have people who have survived the hospital protocol. That means they did survive partial remdesivir application. Now, barely. Okay, then there's other ones who we actually are working with right now that lost their loved ones. And this was a young 18-year-old female who died from the Pfizer shots. Okay, and that's actually a thing that's going on right now. But 18 years old, in perfect health, she had just had her physical and had got the shots because she was feeling pressure from, I don't know, her college activity and friends, and literally a short time after went into all kinds of adverse events and died. So that's a real thing. So I find it hard as someone who's been and knows these people. So I can say, yeah, I'm kind of in the trenches. And if there's this white hat plan that I keep hearing about, that allegedly and with assumptions is going to have some born on date, well, let's get it on, because we will continue that 7 million that you had up there of the people from the shot. Now, in my book, just add another 0 on that worldwide. Okay. Are we going to keep letting that happen, or are we just going to let the next of the 64 pathogens ready for activation come out while they stimulate and stir us into friction and conflict? This weekend, all around our country, all around other areas, they're protesting to get rid of the elected president and the unelected Doge leader. I mean, why can't we get rid of the unelected World Economic Forum and unelected United Nations and the unelected World Health Organization and just kind of do the same thing? Protest them out of business. Well, I've heard that we're going to restrain economics from some of these groups. But I mean, we just bullshit ourselves until the next scenario happens.
Well, Greg, do you think that this is any way a test? We've got people on the left, liberals, whatever we want to call it, that they're now attacking the Tesla owners that these cars were bought for green reasons. So is this to bring attention to the ridiculousness that they're going to eat their own? Like, I mean, I don't know.
It's no different than people threatening their friends that you're a murderer because you're not getting the jab. Okay. This is just, remember David said, facts will not trump a belief. Various people have embedded in their psyche, because they don't operate. Remember what I said about senses? They're operating at a low level. So you can't expect them to act in the way that you may think that they should be acting.
Of course.
But let's backtrack on the facts that we've got here. You got something that we know started in 1953. Fact. We know that they first tested weaponizing it, 1967.
Mm-hmm.
We know they pushed forward with that weaponization in 2002, and patented it and its alleged vaccine in 2003. Then you have all the pharmaceutical companies that got involved in it monetarily. You had all the people in the government, Fauci's, and more than likely everybody in Congress and Senate and the executive office who got involved in all of this weaponization. And you move forward to 2020, when the hysteria caused by the mainstream media brought everybody to the point where everybody was wearing a face diaper and walking around in panic. You had all kinds of ridiculousness going on that nobody had the common sense to look at logically and say, wait a minute, this is bizarro world. You've got liquor stores open and houses of worship closed. You can go into a restaurant, sit down and take off your mask to eat, but to get up and go to the bathroom in the restaurant, you have to go and put your mask on. I mean, there were all kinds of absolutely pathetically ridiculous things going on. And because the people in front of the camera was saying, well, this is what you have to do, and you have to go and get that jab, people like sheep did it. And this is where the culpability, there's no doubt about the fact that the evil stems from the government, stems from the people with the money who control the governments, stems from the greedy people in the pharmaceutical industry, et cetera, and our three-letter agencies who are just murderers to begin with. But the culpability as a whole, as a populace, falls on us.
Oh, most definitely. And that's, again, as you outline the facts, we have them. As David said, many of the people who were behind this, they knew, they put the information out there on purpose. It existed. Does it go on the mainstream cycle of things? No. But there was enough stuff at the highest level that was actually put out there. The Events 201, even I saw that. Learned to find out Dustin Moskovitz was the funder through Open Philanthropy into the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, into Event 201. So, and you all know Dustin is the co-founder of Fakebook. All right. He played his part. Okay. He also played his part in investing in Sherlock Biosciences CRISPR technology. CRISPR is the next stage of the fallout from the mRNA conditions given by that technology. And that CRISPR will, backfill in areas. I mean, it's a pyramid scheme. It's a really good pyramid scheme. I'm just, what really gets me upset is to actually know there's been conversations, know people have been in front of our elected officials supposedly fighting for us and putting these grand juries together and stuff. And I don't know, the seventh inning comes along and there's a rain delay. The game never gets played. So all the effort, look what happened in Florida, grand jury, COVID grand jury, nothing. All right. All this supposed Ron Johnson activity, nothing. Rand Paul, nothing. Those are the headliners. All right. You have Trump, all the discrepancies about him signing the executive order in 2019 that allowed for the high activity research and development of influenza vaccines, which AKA portended into what was the COVID vaccines. And that was Alex Azar, who was his, henchman. Trump picked him. Look who Trump's picking right now for his inner circles. I mean, the guy in the Treasury. What did he do? He ran Soros Fund. Are we joking to ourselves about who's going to help us out in solving the issues that we're trying to solve? I mean, if anything, the first things we should be doing, as David said, scrap the bioweapons program. Scrap the mRNA. Okay, not research it, scrap it. The research is in a cemetery right now.
But I think one of the things that you're failing to look at, or maybe glossing over, one or the other, there's a reason that a lot of the things that have occurred in the 2 months that he's been in office have rolled out so quickly. And the only reason behind it is because it's already been done. Many people, myself included, believe that a lot of these things are done, and what we're going through right now is a public reveal. Now, many of us are not exactly thrilled at the fact that this public reveal is taking as long as it is, because, you know, we're all battle weary. We've had enough. But I would venture to say that with what we've known in regard to the direction things are going, how often the president puts people out in the spotlight that he wants to allow to hang themselves, how often we've seen things be brought to fruition as quickly as they are, it would not surprise me that these bioweapons systems are already gone. Because it's even the matter of, you've got, he institutes on Friday. Was it Friday? No, I'm sorry, it was April 2nd. So Wednesday, these tariffs. And you've already got 50 countries basically saying we give up. So there are a lot of things that, you can't say it too often. It's a military operation. The military operates on a need-to-know basis, and we don't need to know. It's frustrating, it's aggravating, and we have to continue to contend with it until things are further revealed to us. And there are a lot of things that we may never know, just for the sake of people freaking out over it. But I think that a lot of this has already transpired, and we're getting the post game, basically, is what we're doing.
Let me ask you a question, because the question came up about how far back did certain things go. 1947 came up, but okay, if the team that is actually taking things out underneath our observation, so we're not seeing that, with allegedly, you've been given some hints of things going on. At what point in time did the A team come in and take control? You said it's a military operation. So who came in at what point in time and started the inverse of I'm going to just put it out there, the inverse of the eugenics depopulation program?
In my opinion, strictly my opinion, I think that the operation itself, not specifically to the eugenics point of it or anything else, but the full-fledged military operation that we're involved with now goes back to 2012. At what point certain things happened, who can honestly say? But I think that a lot of things have transpired over the past 13 years that have taken care of a lot of this. Even David brought up the fact that, these biolabs are all over Ukraine. And the topic that has been of great discussion is the fact that, Russia's not bombing Ukraine or their cities or the population, because even when CNN first started covering the quote unquote Russian war in Ukraine, they showed what was basically like a traffic cam, and you see people driving down the street, going to work or doing whatever. Russians are bombing you. I ain't getting in the car and driving to work. I'm sticking my head between my legs and kissing my ass goodbye. So there are a lot of things that just don't play out properly. So I think that a lot of what they were doing was just taking out those biolabs and securing everything, because this is, again, it's a military operation, but it's not just a United States operation; it's a global operation.
Yeah. Well, and and Mark, I'm thankful you're bringing that up, because again, I talked to Joe about this. I just have not been exposed enough, or had the information coming. I have to take what I observe and things like that. As like you were saying, this was something that David put together, and this was in our integral accounting group. It was kind of the post activity we did every month, but he put this together relating to Ukraine and Burisma, and just his headlines called "Deadly Distractions." Point one: U.S. policy since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Whoops, hold on. Has been NATO creep and the Budapest Memorandum of 1994. Second point: NATO and the EU have divided loyalties, and underneath that, the Euromaidan protest of 2013 and 14. Next bullet point: can anyone say Burisma and infamous Hunter Biden? Now, again, this was 3 years ago. The war had just started, and we were talking about, what the distractions going on in here, and really, what is this? And lastly, not a new quote conflict, ... Only look at the Atlantic Council members and their ties to Burisma. He talked about the board members, okay? And if I looked at my notes, I could see who some of the board members were and the relationship in the Atlantic Council. So back to your point about, did Russia have intention of minimizing or taking out quote unquote biolabs? Possibly. And when I heard that, I was like, well, that's a good thing. Okay. I don't care whose bomb is from whom. Taking out biolabs, that's a good thing. And so in that case, if that's part of the activity going on, great. I'm all for that. And I would be desirable of activities as you've outlined. Scott, I've heard you talk about some of these things with people, that there is a mission going on. We're just not ready to let out. And I have to be honest. Am I frustrated because I know the loss? The loss of so many people. And people think it was because of what's called, what isn't a thing, and that would be COVID. They think it was COVID. No. And I've got family members who think all this stuff is real.
We all do.
It hurts.
But you have to understand, Frank, and I can, current events.
Yeah.
Current events. I know I'm going to probably catch hell for this. My wife was just in the hospital. You're talking 70-year-old woman, goes into the hospital, has absolutely nothing to do with any respiratory problems whatsoever. And what was the first thing they did when she got there?
Let's see if she's up to date on her COVID shots.
No.
Oh, they did. They did a test.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
And she had requested, no, you could swab the inside of my cheek.
Right.
No, we have to do it this way. And if she didn't want to take the test, they were going to refuse to treat her.
Jesus.
I would have walked out.
Well, unfortunately, it was a situation wherein she couldn't. However, it was a situation whereby she said, the nurse had said, well, it's mandated that we do this. And she told them flat out, a mandate is not a law.
All right.
Law has to be passed by Congress and the Senate.
Yeah.
And they still do it. And that's part of the reason why there is such a slow release of information as to what's going on, because there are still so many people out there who don't get it. When they find out, it's too bad that David had to go and had those issues, because when they find out the rest of the story that he has to tell about where COVID came from and how these people, like I said before, murder one. This is premeditated murder.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And Joe and Scott know this because they've had David on the show. We've talked about Coup de 12, which to me is a outlier playbook of what's happened the last 5 years. I kept telling people, look, if you want to know how this is actually being done, the type of people who are involved in what's going on, read the book, because you're going to get some history that you haven't gotten. You talk about JFK files and stuff. Hey, so it's having, done a lot with David, and I see what the effort that he puts into his presentations to bring out a creative, thoughtful, engage the audience with, so that they start thinking about things. I've watched this for now 4 years, and I go back to old stuff, and I'm going, the old stuff you could actually put in the new, like today. But he never does that. He doesn't repeat his past presentation performance and material. It's kind of unique. So yeah, it's too bad his audio crapped out, and again, maybe at a future time when some other developments happen of whatever nature is going on. Tomorrow the markets open up, and I'm sure the talking heads at CNBC will have all the, wanting everyone with their popcorn. Right, Scott?
Yeah. Well, Mark, the story of your wife going to the hospital really makes me wonder if a mandate, if in the essence of the mandate, if it requires the abandonment or the violation of the Hippocratic Oath, does it cease to be a mandate? And I've been sitting here and I've been thinking about, how did we get here? For those of us that have been paying attention, a lot of this stuff seems really rather obvious. How did this pass the smell test? How did we get here? And we got here because they weaponized human compassion, and human trust. They were very trusting, and ignorance, because we're woefully ignorant. And how did we get so ignorant? Well, they steer culture in ways that where we obsess about everything but what's right under our noses. So this was a perfect storm. I mean, an absolutely perfect.
Along that path, Scott, think about the fact of where this has gone. You talk about the Hippocratic Oath and violation thereof. From the Nuremberg trials, just following orders doesn't cut it. That's number one. Number two, what's transpired over, I guess pretty much so the past decade and a half, but absolutely over the past 5 years in gross amounts, is many doctors' practices have been bought out by hospitals, rendering the doctors not as doctors,
employees,
but as employees.
Yeah.
And when they buy out these practices, they not only buy out the practices, they buy out the patients. So just like any other employee in a sales-oriented business, if they don't continue to bring in the customers, and mind you, that also applies to, if you're a surgeon, you better be keeping that surgery room occupied. If you're doing hip replacements, same thing. Whatever it is, you need to keep that treadmill going. So aside from the doctors knowingly and willingly, because of the orders of their overlords, in the hospitals violating their Hippocratic oaths, it's very plainly become a simple fact that hospitals are no longer institutions of healing. They are just plain businesses. Period. End quote.
Right.
And this is what we're up against. And this is what we should have been fighting against all along. And this
Mark,
goes,
I want to point out the rarity of what you bring to the table. There's a lot of people watching on X right now that may not understand that it's people like you and Ken Rosato and Laura Logan that have had decades in the news world, and you're coming out of mainstream to do this. And I think that is so beautiful and takes so much courage, and we need more people like you. And so I applaud you for doing what you've done after 40 some years in mainstream to do this and come out and have the cojones to talk about that there is a plan to have someone like David Martin on the show. Like, I just really admire what you're doing. And I think people should know that about you, because many people probably have no idea who you're about your background. So I just wanted to say
I appreciate you saying that, but please don't use the term coming out.
I was saying that Clayton Morris and his wife. But, yeah.
we got to have a little humor.
Well, to Joe's point, Mark, having the amount of years in New York City as in front of the camera.
I was behind the camera. Thank God.
You were behind the camera.
Yes.
Oh.
I, as I called it for years, I was the schmuck in the truck.
Schmuck in the truck.
Schmuck in the truck.
Well, schmucks in the truck get to see a lot of what the handiwork is behind the scenes, so to speak.
Right.
So
It's not handiwork. It's misinformation.
well, yeah.
It's, as I've said, it's editorialism, not journalism.
Right.
If I thought any of them was smart enough to give me their opinions, I would ask them for it.
Yeah. Wasn't Associated Press bought out by someone like right after World War II? What was the story about AP? Was it AP or United?
UPI.
I can't
United Press
remember.
International.
United Press International. So, anyways, I thought one of the two or the three were bought out, but I forget what the organization was, which was kind of aligned with the control of what the narrative's going to be.
Well, every mass media company was bought out by big business. There are only 6 companies that own all the mass media worldwide.
Yeah, and who are they, for reference sake, for our listeners?
I can't quote them all, but I know my company was Disney. You had
That's great.
at Viacom, you have Comcast.
Yeah.
You have Murdoch, News Corp.
News Corp, right?
And I forget what the other 2 are.
Yeah.
But this is a global initiative. And what happens, and what I've said in the past, when you're dealing in a situation where the CIA is involved in the media, and Ken and I discussed this last week, but my feeling has always been that initially the CIA's involvement was the fact that if you had a national or international story, you got your information from the government. And, they put the narrative out. But once big business took over the industry, then you had them in the boardroom and making the decisions that way and pushing forth the agendas that they did. So, that's where we are with that. And when you get away from journalism, I mean, let's face it, when you look at COVID, I respect how brilliant Dr. Martin happens to be, but the paperwork is out there. There's absolutely no reason that these alleged reporters should sit there on a day-to-day basis and accept the narrative
Right.
instead of going and searching out the facts, because that is what their job happens to be. Search out the truth and deliver it to the people. And that is a major, major, major failure on the part of the media. And if you track it back, and you could track it back to the 1980s, but if you track it back right through, the Russiagate scandal and the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and going back to World Trade and all of these things, there are so many things that have been reported one way,
Right.
and all the facts are out there that it's the complete opposite, and they don't do their jobs and put out the correct information. And that is a failure, just as the failure of the doctors to put their knowledge and their science ahead of a mandate. They graduated college and they graduated medical school. I think they know what the word mandate means.
All
You
right.
have to be a lawyer to understand that.
Right.
Well, and they were threatened with losing their license if they didn't follow the whatever it was called type of thing. So you
That's
bring
a hell
up,
of a position. Follow the protocol and lose your license, or kill
Right.
somebody.
right.
So you're
Right.
you're either killing someone or you're keeping your job. That's a hell of a position.
Do the thing where you would ultimately definitely lose your job
Right.
to keep your job.
And so that's why there has to be shows like this. And and I know Mark wanted to keep this around 2 hours. But you never know how something like this is going to go. We didn't know we were going to have whatever technical difficulties, but we worked through it. You guys worked through it. And I just appreciate that we're able to have a conversation where Frank is learning some of the things. Now, obviously we had these talks before, but it's a hell of a thing to be learning this stuff live and worrying, like, do we have a secret army? Do we not? What's going on?
I get it. No. Listen, I get it. And I tell some people that maybe they're on the left team that, look, we have pawns on both sides of the color spectrum. We have pawns. So the problem is we're being drawn into a mudslinging battle, but guess what? We're slinging mud that doesn't come off these cars, or spray painting the cars, or doing this. It's like, oh my God, the subject matter of Tesla was like, everyone loved it. I wasn't really big in the EV area, but just for the sake of so many people loved it. And then guess what? The hype was put out there, and, violence and terror, and oh my gosh, send him packing, not the, M13, 16 gang members who got a return trip from wherever. It's like, oh my gosh.
Well, it shows how powerful the media is, because people are watching other people go do these swastika things, and they're like, oh, that's a good idea. Let me go up to a car that has all kinds of cameras on it, do the same thing. And you're watching, one guy was 63 years old, and the media came up, or the cop came up with the camera, and it's like, why did you do this? And he's, his wife is there, and he starts starting to realize how stupid what he did was. And it's like, really?
It's peak. I mean, it's absolute peak stupidity. But isn't this? I mean, we've always watched the left eat itself, right? I mean, they eat each other all the time. This is the pinnacle of it, because most of the people that bought Teslas, in the last decade or so, were probably left leaning. Yeah, I mean, there's certain sacrifices you have to make with an EV that, unless you have a very regimented life, they don't make a lot of sense. Freedom-oriented folks were a little reticent about that, but the left ate it a whole hog. These people are eating themselves, and it's such abject nonsense. If they were really concerned about the environment, which was the predicate for all this EV nonsense, would they set fire to lithium battery banks that are an environmental holocaust compared to, DiCaprio could circle the planet going to one environmental conference after another,
Or P. Diddy
the rest
party.
of his life,
That's
and it
fine
wouldn't
too. Go to the P. Diddy party.
it wouldn't be as bad as a parking lot of Teslas on fire.
Right.
So
look, one of the last things, close to one of the last things that I covered before I retired, was when Greta Thunberg came to New York. And
how dare you?
They had this like Earth Day type of rally down at Battery Park. Battery Park was pretty decent sized area. It's not the size of Central Park, pretty decent sized area. And all of these people turned out to hear this moron speak. And, they were out there for hours. And then the thing finally breaks up. Now, mind you, these are all these, we have to protect the earth. We have to, we have to recycle. We have to do this and that and the other. You have no concept of the amount of trash that was left behind on the lawns there after these animals left.
Oh, sure.
Every time.
Let's conserve the earth.
Again,
use that plastic bag.
I'll go back to my observation. In those people's cases, 1.75 cents is operating.
Yeah.
If that much.
The lights aren't even on, and we know no one's home in that sense. Hey, I've got one last question in the media area. You mentioned Comcast. Comcast, there was a federal regulation where cable TV operators could not own content. Okay, they were distributors. Brian Roberts and his team come along, I think this was like 15 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, when the FCC realigned the ability for Comcast to buy, into NBC, right? So NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, Universal Studios, and I'm missing a couple others as content providers. We know that somewhere between 60 and 75% of content providers make money off of the pharmaceutical industry, something in that ballpark. So I think it was like 6 months ago, Comcast floated the idea of repackaging their content properties into, I forget what they call it. Or, when I first saw it, it's like, oh my God, that maybe they're going to sell off, put for sale some of their content. And I think I had the conversation with David. He's like, I think they have an awareness that there's going to be pressure on pharmaceutical advertising. I was like, yeah, because if that goes away, guess what? The whole house of cards of mainstream media goes down.
Isn't that what's happening with RFK?
Well, that's what we're hearing. And again, remember what happened back in the discussions with Fauci on the pedestal with Rand Paul, never ended up. Okay.
Fair enough.
My concern is RFK and his team can be saying, we want to do this, we want to do that. Hey, it makes sense. I'm behind that. I want people accountable, just like the PrEP Act or the Children's Vaccine Act of '86. I want whatever the company is to be accountable for the product that they're providing, the general public. And most people don't even realize that the vaccine industry has a shield of liability against being litigated on. Okay. Most of the people don't know that, which is really unfortunate. That just a basic, this goes back as pretty long ways in 1986 and the PrEP Act of 2005, I believe. But if we can get to the accountability level, and if the whole advertising thing is addressed, there's a big shift there, a big shift.
But we don't have to wait for that. And this is something I pushed since I started doing this show.
Mm.
The media is pretty simple. Most of the people who work on it are pretty simple too, but the media itself is pretty simple. It's a cash register like anything else. And what does it rely on? It relies on advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So they will put on programming. And during, let's say, the course of a half-hour program, you've got about 24 minutes worth of content and 6 minutes worth of commercials. And depending on the popularity of the show, that determines the cost of a 30-second spot. But irregardless of that, or regardless of that, I shouldn't use the word irregardless, I should know better. But regardless of that, if people turn the damn TVs off, and I've been a proponent of this for a long time already, shut the damn TV off, because the less people registering on those Nielsen boxes, less people who can be counted as viewers, is less money that these companies are taking in. And as the viewership drops, their price per 30 seconds drops. The more the viewership drops, the more sponsors are going to say, I'm not going to advertise on this show. It's not drawing any viewers. So now these companies don't have any place to advertise. The companies aren't getting any revenue because they're not getting any advertisers. And you're hurting the cabal. But for many people, unfortunately, it seems to be too much of a sacrifice. Every time that there's a playoff, be it football, basketball, hockey, baseball,
Oh, yeah.
I always make the plea, don't watch. You want to watch a football game, go to your local high school, watch a football game. Go watch the Little League play baseball. Don't patronize these people. Those are the little things that all of us can be doing.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
The problem with that, Mark, is I mean, you're asserting that everything was driven by a business model and the almighty dollar, but that was suspended at a given point. And for those folks that are wondering if this idea of a cabal that's controlling the pieces on the board, this should be clear evidence. We had multi-billion-dollar corporations committing suicide on the regular. Bud Light, Toyota wrapped a truck in in the trans flag. The examples, I could go on and on and on. That wasn't going to be appealing to the culture. That was to inform, modify, and change the culture. Those funds had to come from somewhere. Those were ESG dollars. And I think all these companies got to the point where, the future looked like it was going to operate on a very different model should this cabal succeed. And if so, where was the revenue going to come from? Those were ESG dollars. So we watched them one after another. Target, the examples are plentiful. They abandoned the model that involved the consumer because the funds weren't coming from the consumer. The funds were coming from those that wish to change the culture, change the dynamic, leverage human compassion, leverage human trust to, filter everyone into the line at the slaughterhouse, figuratively, or in some cases, literally, when we talk about remdesivir and some of these these practices that we've seen. So that would be
those are things that are being forced upon us. Okay, when it comes to the medical community, these are all things that are being forced upon us. You're kind of a captive audience when you go into the hospital. You have to be your own advocate, which very thankfully my wife is, but you have to be your own advocate, or you have no idea what these people are slipping you, and they don't feel obligated to tell you.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is if you happen to be a senior and you act as your own advocate, they go and they check your competency.
Oh, yeah. Unless you're running the country.
Exactly. Then they take you out for ice cream. But
Listen, I'm last night I was on a Spaces, and this is kind of a group that has a lot of the Oklahoma activity in it, but it's actually very broad, and they tell stories about the hospital protocol. It's just it's so egregious. And one of the subjects that came up was the when you're admitted, they ask you, have you had the COVID vaccine? And if you said, no, I haven't, okay, they put you in a different area and you were treated. Now, a lot of people didn't know this at first, but enough of these things happened that they were being treated differently, and people who had the opportunity of getting in the hospital, being with their loved ones, or going through the process of being kicked out, they saw this. They saw how the prejudice of one side versus the other, and here's the worst part: they were administering more opioids, steroids, remdesivir faster, moving towards a ventilator faster for the unvaccinated. They wanted to make sure that they're the ones that suffer. They go up on the scoreboard. They didn't have their shots, so they died. And then the ones who did have the shots and had the symptomology, they were working a little different protocol activity because we're going to save this person because we're going to show how the vaccine lessened. That was hospital gamesmanship. And as David said, the paybacks into that system were amazing. So personal friend goes in, he gets the whatever because he can't breathe. He has 3 rounds of remdesivir. We find out, or I'm texting him. Debbie and I run to his wife's house 40 minutes away with a bunch of stuff, have a conversation. We said, we heard that he had 3 rounds of remdesivir. That's not good. We need to figure out a way to stop that. We did. He got out 26 days later. He had a tough time. I said, hey, what was your bill? He goes, I never got a bill. I said, what do you think it was? I said, I know it's around $500,000. Now, he didn't get the ventilator. He didn't die. So his into Medicare, CMS, whatever you want to call it, his was $500,000 of our tax money circulating through.
Yep.
If it would have gone to a ventilator and he lived, just add another $25,000. If he would have died, just add, some of these went from $500,000 up to $1.5 million.
this was all a money machine. It was
Totally a
all-
money machine. But the egregious part has been in listening to all these nurses who were on these shows, listening to nurses who were watching fellow nurses act like murderers, just, witnessing, going, okay, I got to quit. I'm out of here. I'm done.
Well, when we did the memorial show,
Yeah.
my panel was a nurse. I forget Darcy's last name, but Darcy was on the show. She was a nurse and she quit during that time. And we had a biologist and we had somebody who had lost her father. And when you listen to the stories, we all have people that we know who died because of these protocols, who were taken before their time.
Right.
And again, this is the third time I'm saying it, and I'll say it a billion times. This is premeditated murder.
Right.
Yeah.
And they will be held accountable for it. And it can't happen too soon. And we're running kind of late here. So let's get into the last thing. Let's get a little bit back on topic and start with Joe and Scott. Where do you think we move forward from this point, knowing the little bit
we
that Dr.
evolved?
Martin got into tonight?
I mean, this marks a massive evolution right now. It's either that or we perish. We have a very short lifespan on the current model. Fortunately, I think there's a reason why they call it the Great Awakening. I think we're all doing just that. At slightly different paces. Some folks in Seattle blowing up Teslas might have a little catching up to do, but it's paramount that we evolve, and we see evidence of it. I mean, hell, the last election was a reformation on this bullshit to a significant extent, and I don't think that represents the will of the people nearly as much as it might otherwise if it wasn't for so much election interference like we've seen in the past, probably our whole lives. So I'm entirely optimistic. I know that's a hell of a thing to say after the show we just had, but I am completely.
You're optimistic on coming out, so I mean,
we paid the iron price for this, but this is something that humanity needs to. This needs to become a part of the zeitgeist. Not just that, a part of our DNA at this point. We cannot be fooled like this. We must remain vigilant. The only reason this had a chance of happening in the first place, albeit from a sea of manipulation that spanned, well, like Frank said, probably from the 1800s to avoid it, we stopped being vigilant. We're too occupied with what's right in front of us or what's novel, what's amusing, and we're not really keeping our eye on the ball. I think when the truth comes out on all this, we're not going to take our eye off that ball. We're just not. And I think that's what we're arriving to, a whole new version, human 2.0, 4.0, whatever you want to call it.
Well said.
Josefina, how about you?
Well, I mean, I know the three of us are doing everything we can. I know David's doing everything he can. I can't imagine hearing someone as intelligent and articulate as David, almost in some way screaming into the void, like it's all right here. And where's his colleagues? Where's the other folks? And here we are doing everything we can to support David. I mean, what a time to be alive and to have someone like David. I mean, and I was fortunate enough to go to the 12 Senses with Frank and to watch him get these downloads and to educate humanity. I mean, you learn what the 12 senses are. That's what I would say for people. Start digging into them. Start learning what, David and the people that are supporting him, watch the things that we're all doing to do everything we can to try and help educate humanity. Man, I was at a dinner party last night and they're talking about how Obama was the best president. I'm sitting there like, oh,
go team.
But what's that?
I said go team.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think that we would have ever ended up in the predicament that we're in now had human beings been using 12 senses? No,
exactly.
This is why this work
is why it's so important. And there's a whole other side to David. There's many sides that's full of the joy of humanity and what we're capable of, and that what's been hidden from us. And and he even talked recently. I put another clip out about the off-world aspect of what's going on. So God, I hope we're around to see what David has to share with us, and that we can really learn our 12 senses, because just like David says, we're all capable of it. He just has a way of accessing it and verbally articulating the things about humanity that have been hidden from us. So I'm so happy to be having these conversations, to have met Frank and David in person, to have conversations with Mark, and to do what it is that we do. Like I think we're doing everything we can. I don't know what else to do right now, Mark.
We have to keep talking.
Yeah, I think
really what we have to do. Go ahead, Frank.
I mean, I'm super grateful for the exposure I've had with the three of you, and obviously with David. I mean, David is one who has had the experience, and he's had through Coup de 12, he's had the experience with literally the individuals and the directors that have a participation in part of this. Okay. I mean, we're talking about he was offered to join their team for free twice. That means not have to pay the $500 million to get in the game, in the enterprise. So as Joe mentioned, and Scott, I totally agree with you. We are in a position of like, I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a great time doing all the things I'm doing. Obviously, you heard my voice of concern and my emotion of concern, but we're in a position to alchemize ourselves into, hey, I can be bulletproof to the flak that's going around me. Okay, I can do my qigong. I can do things that make things more calm. I can, work the what's the calm one here? Intuition and calm, the vagus nerve. Okay, I can work on that. I can work on other various nerves that help me operate at a higher level. And so David's got, we haven't mentioned this yet, and he would have mentioned this, but coming up April 12th, so Saturday coming up, what is today? The
6th.
So in 6 days, he will be presenting at transitiontalks.org. That's, Transition Talks with an S.org. You can actually see the registration for either in person or live streaming. And David is giving a presentation at the Arlington Institute, which is in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. Now, this is the third year in a row that I've been witness of this. And he gives a 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock segment. So he does just about 3 to 4 hours of his presentation. And it's like amazing. It's like what's the current state of things where we are today. But he's doing a little bit of a step into a book that he and two other co-authors did. And that book's name, Creativity. I'd have to look it up. I don't have it in front of me. But, he's going to go into, the assumptions that we as humans have been making along our path to where we are today. So I don't have the tagline in front of me, but I would, I can put in the information inside of the various streams here, but you can find it at transitiontalks.org. And again, it will be in 6 days. I will be there. Debbie will be there. Some other people that have been to the 12 senses and other ones who have been to these very, very high level presentations that he does.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Guys, this has been unbelievable. Unbelievable. I wish it had gone farther. I wish that we had more time with David to get more information about COVID, but we will do this again.
Yeah, we just get a do-over now. maybe next week. I don't know. We got to reach out to David, but maybe send him a Starlink or something. I don't know what's going on out there. David,
what would be great though? Okay, I'm again, everyone can watch this live stream on this coming Saturday, but I think we're going to hear some things that will be relative to what we're discussing, and we're going to hear another kind of perspective and things that only he can give us to really think about, that thing in relationship to this thing and where we are. And really, what are you doing? my cat is going nuts behind me. Sorry about that.
No,
So it would be interesting, obviously, having a get together after that presentation.
And Lord knows, because unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. Fortunately, I do have guests booked up for the next couple of weeks. But when we revisit this, Lord knows where we're going to be, because it'll be after the 1st of May.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we keep our hopes up, hopefully it'll be some good times. And I'm not talking, JJ Walker, but hopefully it'll be some good times. But I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I think that it was a great discussion. We got a lot of information out there about the evil that we've been living with and the evil that we have allowed to creep into our society and take over our society. And now we're in the process of getting rid of it. And like Frank said, we have to be extremely, extremely vigilant, staying on top of this and making sure never again.
Hopefully this time we find some balance instead of just riding this pendulum back and forth the way we've been doing throughout most of our history.
Yeah, well, that's that friction and conflict of you're bad, you're right.
I say it almost every week now, but we have to get away from selfish and get to selfless.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will get there. So I want to thank you guys, Joe and Scott and Frank and Dr. Martin. It was a great show. I want to thank Kat and Claudia and Carrie and Doug for all of their help. And I want to thank the audience, without whom we just be four guys sitting here talking to each other. I'm really glad you all joined us. We had a great audience tonight, a very large audience, and I do greatly appreciate it. We'll be back next Sunday night with yet another in my ongoing series of trafficking survivors with Lynn Hagerman. So it's going to be another very, very interesting discussion. I hope you will all join us. Hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next week on Respect. Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
gentlemen.